This is Tea with Botha.
The intersections between African psychology and Western psychology, difficult to understand in some quarters, but also to comprehend. These are new terrains that both psychologists and healers are not able or are dealing with. These are contested spaces. And today we are joined by Anele Siswana, who is a healer, who is a psychologist, who is a public intellectual. He is here to help us to navigate, to understand, and to clear misunderstandings that arise as a result of what is African psychology, what is Western psychology. And Anele, thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, mangiqale nithi camako kwaBotha, meaning I am asking for reception not only from you, but those who are before us and those who are with us in spirit, aboBotha. Nabasematolweni.
Yeah. Abothangana, aboqila, abombamba.
Camako. So, Anele, a very interesting young man. I look at my life and the only thing that comes to mind is a rainbow. Rainbow has different colors, right? Leave the fact that I'm queer. I belong to the rainbow community.
Yeah,
right?
You're queer.
Yeah, as a gay man.
Gay man.
But the symbolism of a rainbow suggests these intersections that you've highlighted. One intersection being iGqirha, that stems from my background and lineage of amagqirha ekhaya. So there's a very strong historical evidence of ubugqirha not ubungoma. I don't want to go there.
What's the difference?
The difference is ubugqirha is a construct that comes from kwaXhosa, stems from the orientation of ingulo emhlophe. Ukuguliswa ngabantu abadala. This is why you've got songs kwaXhosa kuthiwa bantwana bokugula. You've got songs that say gumama ingulo yakuloma. All of these things suggesting something that is inherently different about ukuphiwa nokubizwa ngabantu abadala from a construct of Xhosa divinity. And if you notice amagqirha, they have two significant distinct beads. One is white and small ones, defining the nuances of ubugqirha. It's not the big ones. And that is symbolic of ukwamkela ingulo emhlophe. And technically, it becomes the very same bead that is used as the first introduction to ubugqirha. Then there is in Simbe, a light blue. Hence you would see mostly blue and white kwaXhosa as amagqirha, and then others get abantu, they get shown and all of that. Now ubungoma, from my limited understanding, I'm not a sangoma. Even though I once knocked at the wrong door and I realized this is not me. You would typically realize that it stems from the idea of ubungoma as a construct yaKwaZulu. As much as it's a Ngoni practice, but predominantly more KwaZulu. From the little, and again, I'm not an expert on this. And then their beads are red and white. For us, uktwasa or intwaso is a process, whereas for ubungoma, intwaso is suggesting something that looks like the complete phase. It's an event. It's a moment that signifies completion. Whereas intwaso for us kwaXhosa, uyathwasa. Then ugqibile, then you become iGqirha, ubekwe enkundleni kuthiwa ugodusiwe. And this is some of these nuances. So the distinction is quite clear in terms of umagqirha nezangoma, because the way we do divinity, the way we understand divinity is different, even though there are similar nuances. That's just one part. So ubugqirha ekhaya is a thing yekhaya. My great grandmother, who was Noma Xhosa, she was the healer, married to Ematolweni, and kwazala umakhulu wami onguNomagcalega, ongumzukulwana woJili, umakhulu wami ukhokho wami engumajili. Now this came with umakhulu ongukhokho to emzini, wathwasela emzini akhe, she did everything, then gifted umntana wakhe umakhulu, who she never completed actually, ubuGqirha bakhe due to other issues. Then it had to be my mom who never finished as well, wayeka endleleni. Then it was my aunt who never finished, wayeka endleleni. Then it had to be the fourth generation, myself, to qualify as iGqirha elipheleleyo. Ndabekwa enkundleni and fully graduated. That's the identity around myself as a healer. And I like your orientation or location of defining me as a healer, because that's quite distinct for me, because you don't categorize it, but rather you make it a universal construct that does not box me into one way of being a healer. But by definition, it's important to deem me as a iGqirha. Two, how I ended up in psychology. I always say psychology found me. I was one of the dumbest in my class. Ask anyone in my previous high school. Where
did you go to school?
KwaZakhele High School. I never went to multiracial schools. I went to KwaZakhele High School, and like I said, you can ask people, I was not the smartest. But there's only one teacher I will never forget. His name is Mr. Qola. He retired now.
Mr.
Qola, yeah. And he...
Still alive?
Still alive. A very vibrant teacher that identified my gift as a speaker. And he took me through training and exposed me to mentorship around public speaking. And to date, that's my trade, and forever grateful. Now, you can imagine this young boy is not good at school. I couldn't dream of being a doctor because mathematics was not my greatest strength. Physics was not my strength. Being an engineer was not the alternative. Being an accountant, everything that was just numbers and all of that was difficult for me. But on kind of literature, reading kind of subjects, I did well in that. Now, where I'm saying psychology found me, I was a curious child, and one of the things that made me curious was, why was I different? I never knew the name for what I felt as a different boy, but I got to realize that there's a name for what I was feeling, and the name was called, or was defined as, gay. Then I wanted to do the psychology of, how come am I different from other boys? And then...
At what age did you that feeling that you're different?
I think as early as grade 2.
Grade 2.
Yeah.
Grade 2, you would be...
9, something along the lines of that.
And how did it manifest? Were you attracted to...
I was just curious. I mean, there was this cute guy that I used to like. I don't know. Oh, he was the cute boy that time.
Beautiful boy.
Even I love cute boys. Anyway.
Even now.
You have to be handsome. That's the first thing. You know, my partner, he's very beautiful. He's a beautiful man.
Easy. But no. The last time we met, you were still struggling to find a partner. But
that time I was still busy, man.
Yeah.
Hey, no.
And you said it's almost 10 years now you're together.
It's 10 years
with him.
Yeah, with him.
Is it beautiful?
Too beautiful. Relationships. Yeah, sometimes I become a problem because I'm a late bloomer. So I want to play here and there.
You stray.
I'm ADHD, so I get swayed by different things. Everything must be colorful to keep me going.
Okay.
But to be quite serious there, Putuam, is the idea that I've always known there was something different, even though I didn't know the languaging around it.
Yeah.
And I don't often talk about this, which was a very difficult thing as I was growing up. I was sexually molested by a known person to my family. And I sat with it for years. And interestingly, he did that repeatedly until I felt that it was normal. And there was a point in my identity crisis of figuring myself out if was I truly gay or was it because of the sexual penetration. So if I didn't have that experience of being penetrated by a man, would I have felt gay? Would I have thought I am gay? And the idea of pain and pleasure, I mean, for a young boy, you can imagine a penis on his buns, and there was some degree of pleasurousness that then came as because he was doing quite often. And that was a kind of a struggle in my life that am I gay because of the sexual and experience, or am I truly gay because I'm gay? And that was the longest struggle for a very long time. There was a time where I was hypersexual, um, very much like I just loved sex. I had a condition also. I would really, um, it was a very difficult time, man. Until I resolved it, probably when I trained as a psychologist at Rhodes University, and then I discovered actually the feeling has always been there. It is just that it got confused by an experience of an involuntary sexual encounter.
Okay.
And then that's when I kind of realized that even more so, in the queer community, there's top, bottom, versatile. It took me a very long time to even allow a man to come behind me. And then I realized there was trauma there. But now I can be versatile, I can be top, I can be bottom if I want to. I'm not fixated in that because...
In fact, you may not know this or remember, you taught me bottom, top, you taught me, when Cape Town,
yes, when we
at the
first...
Methodist
at the
Church
Methodist
conference,
yeah.
which also makes it, because you're also a theologian.
Yeah.
You know, which,
I studied theology as well, which is part of my...
so you have a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's African, it's Western, and then it's theology.
Always those
and
intersections.
it's queer. These intersections.
Yeah. So that's the part with Abrambo around my queer identity and being a psychologist. And now I didn't get the marks to qualify for psychology. You remember, I was not the smartest kid, but I tried. And I got an exemption, but the exemption could not earn me direct entry to do a BA psychology degree. And eventually, I had to write an assessment test, and then I passed. I remember the day I registered at Nelson Mandela University, I wore that student card with pride because I was the first in my family to enter the doors of higher education at university. I slept with that student card because it meant something different and something beautiful, and I vowed I will never fail. And I completed my degree in record time and became a psychologist at the age of 25. So it's been such an incredible journey to become a psychologist, but not an easy one. And even in the field of psychology, I've always felt, hey man, I am not here in what I'm studying. So I've started questioning the idea, where is psychology that looks like me for my people, with my people? And that's when I discovered the idea of African psychology. And this book, The World Looks Like This by Kopano, it really places so much ground and fertile ground for me because I now have the language to do the kind of psychology that I like and that I am in the room. I'm not the psychologist that goes into the therapy room dressed in a suit. I wear insimbizam.
This is called Insimbi.
Yeah, Insimbi. I have his pandas on my very expensive Rolexes. I walk barefoot. In my office. I burn in pepper. I don't burn Indian sticks because iGqirha, ningumXhosa, I'm an African. Even though that sits with certain comforts and discomforts for many, but I do psychology in Africa for Africans, so I should look like everything close to being an African.
So you have this two rare combination. The healing and the psychology.
It's the same for me. It's just that when it comes into that, the way we think about science of iGqirha, we're thinking about a science that has been socially constructed theologically as ubuGqirha obuthakathi.
That's witchcraft.
It's dirty. It's earthy.
It's ungodly.
Ungodly.
It's
It's all of those things.
unholy and
right?
Yeah.
So automatically, when you place that in theology, when we do our divinity, there's no recognition of Jesus there. It's kuqamata, umvenenqangi, modimo. It's nature and those who have passed. That's our conceptualization.
And Christianity, those that were passed.
God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Can you see these two contradictions, right?
Mm.
Right now. So in the way of how this is conceptualized, it's then deemed as if it's all of these things that are dirty and dark, how can it be a science? That's what theology says, Christian theology says. At the same time, the very same Western psychology says the same thing. You are psychotic, you are crazy, you are insane when you operate in this world. So now, with my orientation, I am a psychologist who's a social scientist, right? I study human realities at the depth and the lenses of psychology, or through the lenses of psychology. But I am then saying to psychology, I can't silence my science that I possess, which may not be in writing, but the science that I am brings in a new reality of understanding that psychology is far more than just the mind, the body, but psychology that we speak of, thanks to Carl Jung's and many others that really brought about this, the Manganyis and many others that have written about the place of African psychology, that then say, in the beingness of an African person, there is the soul and the spirit. And that's where I come in. I was not trained to recognize the place of the soul and the spirit. My lived sciences I bring from home, from Anoma Kosa, and everyone that has gone through this path before me, are now then saying, will give you spaces that will equip you with the language and the understanding of existing in the spaces that will legitimize the science that we bring. But you will be the voice of that. And this is why we want you to do the PhD, to get the scientific document that legitimizes you as a doctor, that then you don't have to justify yourself when people ask you, how did you conceptualize this concept?
What's your PhD on?
It looks at the intersection of African healing practices in response to mental health conditions from a Western psychological perspective.
From the Western?
Yeah. So basically, I'm trying to understand, how do African healing practices can help us to respond to mental health conditions, right? Your depression, your bipolars, and all of that. What are some of the African healing practices that we can utilize to respond to these things?
Are they?
Definitely. This is why I'm doing a scientific study to understand what those are. And guess who's my participants in this? iGqirha in the Eastern Cape. Not psychologists. Because iGqirha, they themselves are knowers of their own reality. iGqirha, you come in, iGqirha lokubuza uba uzeleni today. iGqirha liyakuxelela ungakathethi athi Tatu Botha, kwenzeka oku noku 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 noku.
This is what you're going through,
Yeah.
without me saying anything.
Yes, that's diagnosis. Then I ask you questions and probe about the very same things. You say yes. That's doing intake assessment. At the end of the day, it's either unesigulo. That is, isigulo could be anything, right?
That you are sick.
Yeah, you are sick because you are being bewitched. There is an ancestral issue. There's something you need to do. But not everyone comes to a healer for izigulo. Kunabantu who get diagnosed with ingulo. These are two different things. Sickness is what brings patients to the doctor, right? Ingulo is not sickness, but rather an experience of someone who is called, who is unique, called by ancestors to do the work of the divine world.
Give an example. Is that what you?
The example is
what you went through?
Anele got physically sick, and there was evidence of the epilepsy, temporal lobe epilepsy. I was hit by a car when I was 7. A lot of trauma happened to me as a child.
Yeah.
Then I had a brain injury, traumatic brain injury with a lot of cognitive deficits and all of that. And then subsequent to that, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Then I had insulin resistance because my pituitary gland is not properly working and all of that. That's sickness. Those are medical conditions that you can say that they are there. Ingulo, in the midst of that, in these admissions.
And that's what you went through.
Yeah, in the admissions.
Your family history up here.
Yeah, admissions, EEGs, MRIs, confirming all of this. That was sickness and disorders. But there came a time where I was not responding to these treatments.
The Western medicine.
Yeah. And misfortunes that didn't make sense to me. Then I had to ndiguduke ndisiwe eGqirheni lindixilonge lendixelela uba we see all of this, right? But there is something that ungekazalwa amathongo akini gifted you with.
Before you were born.
Before I was born. I was an answer to solutions that they needed. And so they needed an Anele who was going to be responding to that. But they had to babamgulise kuqala for him to see ingulo. Ingulo then meant to say, angenzelanga imbeleko yakulo mama ngoba ngiyintana wentombi ngomntana womshado. It meant nginesiphiwo ezimbini, isiphiwo sobuprofeti, being a prophet, and ubuqirha. And at that time I was heavily deep in the Methodist Church because at some point I was...
You're a lay preacher.
I am a lay preacher.
Yeah.
I had thought that my calling is more in line with uba umfundisi, but I'm queer, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be... Because
they would excommunicate you. Methodist Church?
No, they wouldn't. They would still allow me, but you wouldn't be fully allowed to be living your truth as a gay man who happens to be a mfundisi.
You do have
a mfundisi, but our Methodist Church doesn't allow that.
That you can openly be queer.
You can be openly queer, but legally, in terms of civil union and recognition of same-sex marriage, then
the Methodist doesn't.
No, we can welcome you, but we can't bless and officiate. Right, that was another issue for me. But for the most part, no, ministry for me, I'm a rebel, so it wasn't going to be a problem. So now I then went to the prophetic route because there's no need for twasa and doing all of these things that are difficult. Then I went to the church route. Ezayon, Nkole Zayon ekhaya, isithunywa, ukukhulekela abantu to see and all of that. But they said that's not enough. Remember, the goal is to heal historical traumas. And the only model for the healing of these historical traumas, it is for you uhambe uyotwasa. Awuthwaseli wena nobizo. We get it unesiphiwo sokwelapha abantu nokuphilisa abantu. But it is through this gift and the journey you're going to undertake that's going to unravel all of these things, ekhaya, that have always been there and not dealt with. And one of it was my surname, Siswana. Yes. To the point that, in fact, we spoke about my grandfather's grave not known. It goes as far as my great-grandfather's grave is not known. And including his wife. Right? So part of it was lungisa lesi sibongo sakho, because isibongo sakho, that's your code of existing in this world. And so if kunenkinga nemiqobo ekhoyo ngeli gama, then it's going to be a problem for you. So twasa so that you can fix icala lakulo ma ozala ubaba wakho necala lakulo gogo ozala ugogo wakho. And that's what Twasa has done for me in giving us the imagination of what healing traumas look like. For the first time in my family, I can say, Brambo, there's ancestral order. Ancestral order for me looks like there are no issues of umsamo. Umsamo, it's your head offices where you report to. Now we know umsamo belongs to umkhulu, that is usiswan, right? Because we're shatil kokwam, even though they may have had their differences. So it means our headquarters ngusiswan, my headquarters
Siswana.
Amatolo become part of this bigger community because balotsholwa ngabantu bakwaSiswana. Umakhulu ukhokho wami is the gift bearer, right? Now, all things we know who is in this order of this parliament. But when it comes into my gift, the Speaker of Parliament becomes Majil Nomaqos. But when it comes into issues Zekai, Wasiswana, the altar is Siswana.
Interesting.
Right.
And Anele, the West, how do they treat trauma? But also I want you to juxtapose it with or healing, and how do they deal with trauma and the healing? But also to say more to me about how the African healing.
Okay. Yeah, so just to wrap up what we spoke about,
Okay.
these intersections and identities we spoke about, and you can see how deeply layered all of these, the queerness, there's a story behind.
You're being queer.
Yeah, there's a story behind. There is the molestation, there is the search of self, there's a reconciliation of self. There's Anele the psychologist, the becoming of the psychologist, who found himself there, who didn't have the marks. Psychology found him, psychology made him. I would not be the Anele who's known as I am if it wasn't for the field of psychology. Then there's Anele iGqirha, there's a story behind. There's sickness
that Anele went
through. There is Ingulo, there is Uktwasa, there is the dying of self that Anele needed to do to allow for this process of Uktwasa. I've done many forms of things that are deep, Rambu, but Uktwasa really humbled me. And my ancestral name is called Alande Itong.
Alande Itong.
Yes. You can do it in two different tones. Alande Itong.
Alande Itong.
Or Alande Itong.
Or Alande Itong. Yeah.
Right. It's two folds. Alande to fetch, to reclaim, to restore. Right? Remember, there is an ancestral gift that has always been there in the family. So come and bring it.
Come and reclaim it.
Come and reclaim it. Make it palatable, make it relatable to us, and leave it for us. But also, hambolanda imfundo, hambolanda buchebi, hambolanda mali. Right.
Yeah, interesting.
That's the narrative around ubuqirha constructed around Alande Itong. Right? Now, all of these worlds exist within the intersections of science, divinity, and indigenous knowledge systems. Right? Now, how I then understand my voice in the field of psychology, I position myself as a healer. And I'm trying to help African bodies and those that come to me to come and reimagine with me, what does healing look like in Africa for an African? So the kind of clients I attract are the kind of clients that say, I am more than just the pathology the psychiatrist has given me, that I'm bipolar, I'm schizophrenic, I've got a personality disorder, I've got substance abuse problem. Even in that substance abuse problem, Anele, make me understand, in my lineage, was there any mkhulu or gogo that struggled with alcohol addiction?
These are the traumas you talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when I come in, because in my historical background and tracing, I'm able to make these connections. And sometimes, even when I'm with the patient, I'm directed at what to say and what to do. But I am trained on how to regulate myself and how do I bring that into the space. So the idea of what you are asking me to unpack as to what does this healing really look like in practice? It can only manifest itself, for the most part, with psychologists like myself that have got the eyes and the ears to see what's not in the textbook, but rather what is in the spirit.
That's what's not
In the
found in the
Western textbook, but rather felt in the spirit in the moment with the patient.
So the Western healing would be different to...
Completely. The Western healing, we need it, right? It gives us the lens. Well, it pays the medical aid, right? It pays the insurance, right? The African still has a long way for it to pay the insurance or to be paid by the insurance, right? So it helps that I can still have the science in the room, right? Bring it so present in the room, but in the way of how I then package it when I do my planning with you or my treatment plan, then the spirit work is going to come. So people are always preoccupied. How do you do the separation?
Which is, yeah,
That's what you are technically asking. So I always ask people, how often do you ask people to be unblack in the therapy room with a white patient?
Say that slowly when
How do we, if I am working with a white patient and the white patient has an issue with my race or being black, can I undo it? Can I undo being black? Exactly. Can I undo being queer? Why do I need to undo being an African healer in the room? Right? So what I'm trying to say is we bring positionalities and bring identities in the room that are accepted and non-accepted. If I am a racist at heart, that is not going to change because I'm in a different space or I'm a scientist. It will still remain. So what I'm trying to say is people always curious about who am I and what I bring into the space. I nicely tell them I will never silence being me in the room, because it becomes the very same tool that expands the idea of what the healing looks like for my patient. I had a patient this week with another doctor. I mean, obviously, in hospital settings, you have to adhere to the medical model and the psychiatric model. And then this patient had asked me to reflect on something with her, which required me to tap into my identity as a healer, which she was excited that I'm a healer. It turned out the interpretation of what I then gave from an African lens or from my world of divinity is something she was not willing and ready to hear. Then she made it a problem and made me look like I make her uncomfortable. But I was like, you brought the discomfort. And I sat with the discomfort and I became the discomfort in the room. So what's your issue?
And how did you resolve it?
I said, sit with it because it's your experience, it's not my experience. What I'm not going to do is to remove these. And I can't silence what I see in the room, but I can regulate what happens in the room. But you brought that out of me and I gave it to you. So what is that I owe you now? Then she said she wants a new psychologist. And I said, well, I'm good. Then later she changed and said, no, I still want to work with you because you're an incredible therapist. So here's an incredible thing that happens. Anele is an incredible gifted therapist, right? He makes the room colorful. He's clear, he's clinical and all of that. But immediately, him being a healer comes into the room, everything suddenly becomes dark. Right? So I actually wrote a book chapter now. It's going to be published soon. It's the title is I Love My Dirty Work.
I love my dirty work.
Yes. Stemming from the idea that the work that I do is deemed as dirty in the field of psychology, but the same field of psychology is benefiting greatly and immensely from my dirty
Is that
work.
the Western psychology
Yeah.
that views it
As dirty?
as
Yeah.
dirty?
I mean, if you're a clinical psychologist, you must be posh, like, you must be proper, man. You must speak proper English. I mean, you studied in an English university. You're not expecting these things. You're not expecting beads. We're expecting proper, man. Be proper. Now, here's an Anele who does dirty work. He comes into the room walking barefoot. There's a smell of impepo in the office.
So
he sits on the floor sometimes with his patients. Patients request to sit on the floor with him. They take off their shoes when they come into this room because they understand and respect the identities that he upholds. That is not only a therapist. I can't undo what they want to do by taking off their shoes because they say we don't only see the therapist, but we see those who walk with you. So we've got to honor and respect them.
is that part of the decoloniality?
No, actually, in my view, decoloniality is a different thing. It's a different agenda, right? But my agenda is simply African identities do not need to justify themselves in the room of therapy. Decoloniality just provides the tools, the theory, the thinking around it. But in practice, no Anele who's different should forever feel obligated to subscribe to strong Eurocentric Western ideals of what psychologists should look like and be that has no recognition of an African body in its language and its construction.
Without getting into more details, Anele, you gave an example, a recent one with your client. How do you resolve such what may seem contradictions? I guess you're in a hospital setting, and you come in, Anele barefoot. Anele is both a healer, iGqirha, and is also a psychologist. These clashes, how do you resolve them?
I don't consider them as clashes, I consider them as gifts. It's gifts to the field of psychology.
Interesting. You say this.
Yeah. This is why now Crenshaw conceptualized the idea of intersectionality because it's crossroads coming together, right? Now, the idea of clashes confirms problematic ideologies that see psychology as Western and anything African as non-psychological or non-Western. But intersection rather says, let's look at how these crossroads come together, how these many moving parts weave together to give us this beauty. You know, when I look at my practice as a psychologist who happens to be iGqirha, you know, when you're knitting something, when you're crocheting something, Brambo, there are different colors there. Whatever product that then comes is, it's many different crossings that have happened in the crocheting period and in the process of that. But what then happens, the product becomes so beautiful. And that's how I see my work. So where patients bring, or even not patients, colleague, bring a sense of controversy to say, or these different contentions, I educate them rather than fight with them. Why do I do what I do? I said to one psychiatrist I am working with, you must choose who you want to work with. And what I meant by that, I can't separate Anele, who is the clinician you admire when he speaks the clinical language, but the Anele you don't like when it comes to the hospital setting, wearing his beads and interpreting dreams that the very same patient has asked. So choose who you want to work with. And if you don't want me into your space, then tell me so that I know. Like, no, we can work around this, man. Just make sure that you keep things purely clinical. And I said, even my work as a spiritual worker is clinical. So I always have to find myself in spaces of legitimizing myself.
Do you find that easy?
It's my everyday life, so it shouldn't be easy. It's a nice thing to do.
Yes. And Anele, when you say this, you don't find it's you're saying it's not something difficult.
No.
How do you, I mean, as a therapist, I mean, how do you combine, I mean, the spiritual healing, and with trauma as in your Eurocentric language? How do you combine the two?
Again, people are so fixated on this idea of separation. You know, a lot of literature and research talks about integration of the two. Right?
Integration of the two.
African healing practices, even though they term it differently. And it's often research done in relation to healing professionals in the healing space, helping professions, psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors, and healers, traditional healers, right? And with ideas of looking for integration. And I stand differently to say there's no need to integrate here, but rather a need to intersect, right? Now, how I imagine this in practice, a Hindu healer who happens to be a psychologist, they are not asked why they do yoga, why they do meditation, why they do mindfulness. But a traditional healer who happens to be a psychologist must justify why you're going to bend him back, why you're going to interpret dreams, why are you going to do this, why are you going to do that.
So, but you're saying that Hindu healer, who's also a psychologist, would not be asked why he does or she does yoga and what.
No.
So, what would you ascribe that to? Is it because there's a failure to understand?
It's the way of how African healing or African healing of systems are constructed and positioned in society. What would look like meditation, there's research done on it, right? There's research, there's articles, we know evidence-based meditation and mindfulness, what it does. Whereas the kind of work that I do, how many evidences do we have that on publications around the work we do? So that's just one part. But for the most part, how I imagine the separation for the sake of today's argument.
Okay.
I practice from my home, and after Ntwasile, I couldn't practice in public spaces.
You couldn't open
No. I was in Sentin. I was that boy when I was in Sentin. I was doing well in my career, serving predominantly middle, high-class people in Sentin. But through Twasa, I couldn't continue with that. Then I had to go to my place at home. And that home allows me to have my practice room on the side and my private space, and on the other side what you'll typically have called or known as indumba.
Yeah.
Right.
You have those.
Yeah.
So you have what, 2 or 3 places?
I've got my normal therapeutic space.
When you say normal, you mean the Western?
The Western.
The Western, yeah.
Right. That's where I do the psychological work and all that. Then there is indumba.
Indumba. That's where you do ancestral, traditional.
Traditional work.
Yeah.
Now, no, the other one is just my personal private space.
Okay.
Now, with these 2 spaces, I've already defined what's done where and how. Now, patients, because they know Anele is a healer, this integration has become a trademark, in fact. People who would say, I want a psychologist who will see many parts of me beyond the construct of the textbook. Right? And patients that say, Niktongile and Pupil, I was sent to you. Those are my referrals.
Have you had such experiences?
Yeah, people who have dreamt of me, who come with instructions of how I should help them.
They tell you.
Yeah. in
That
resolving
in the dream,
childhood traumas, in resolving matters of the past.
this is how this is how I'll be healed.
How I was shown you would heal me. Obviously, I do my assessment and honor that which the patient brings to the room. So how I then do it? So HPSA, the Health Professionals Council of South Africa, does allow people like myself to not to dabble, but to honor different practices.
They do?
They do. HPSA does. There's a clause that allows us to do, but we have to ask for written consent. If the patient allows that, you can tap into the other world. And that's what my patient, I've got a lot of consents that I can share if I'm obligated to do so, but by confidentiality rights, I won't.
At which I respect that. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I respect that.
What I'm saying is,
because I want to consult you one day, and I would not want,
So that's that part. But what I'm saying is, there is grounds that allow us. There are grounds that allow us to really imagine what the integration looks like. But I'll be very clear in terms of my treatment plan. What are we treating? If there is a historical trauma of umsamo, as an example, where I have a patient who comes to me with a story or a scenario around their identity.
Yeah.
Around surnames, around his tagazelo, and all of those things. We'll do the psychological work. But then if it means then now that I have to tap into the other side, when they go to the other side, they also sign a consent form. I've got a consent form as Ndumben.
Yeah. In the ancestral.
Yes, I've got a consent form for that. Because it has its own rules, right? Then in there, it's very clearly defined what we're going to do. It's either we're going to do cleansing, it's either I'm going to do certain rituals and practices as a result of responding to that request that came through your dreams or through the instruction of what then comes out of divinity. Yeah. So even in Ndumben, the treatment plan is clearly defined with an intention to heal trauma, to heal self, to tap into what's beyond the brain and the body, but rather that of the soul and the spirit.
Interesting. And Anele, what is it that, people like you who, straddle both worlds, Western and African, to make your Western practitioners to understand, the richness, the value.
Brambo, I even stopped trying to make my Western counterparts to understand. They don't respect us. They don't see us. They don't hear us. So I don't waste my energy.
So there's nothing that you'd say this would go a long way.
No.
So they don't.
It's loaded on race. It's loaded on misconceptions, loaded on stereotypes, loaded on prejudices.
Is it the superiority and then inferiority that anything that's African is
non-scientific?
It's non-scientific,
non-proven. You can't respect that.
No.
But what I do nicely in spaces that have influence, like we've got the Psychological Congress of Psychologists in South Africa that happens every year in October. I make sure I present there.
You present a paper there?
I present papers.
Yeah, papers.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that if you want to see things changing, Bombi Primer ivutela cool. You know,
so what do you do in those spaces? That
everyone wants to come and feel the heat.
Give an example. What do you do?
I present very controversial papers that I know people want to do things that...
Give an example.
Like now, I'm presenting a paper on my duality as an iGqirha and a psychologist and how that looks like in practice. And I am asking the question, am I a transgressor or one of you?
Gee, am I a transgressor or one of you?
Yes. I'll do two juxtaposition of the work that I do as a healer and I'll do as a psychologist. So I will ask them to engage me as, am I a transgressor or one of you? Right? So as to normalize the kind of work that we're doing. And the other paper stems from the chapter I recently wrote, I love my dirty work. So I've learned, if you want to beat them, join them. So I write scientific, published, peer-reviewed papers. That's how you're going to win the game.
So that's your strategy.
When they're asking me, where do you get this? Like, go and read my paper. And I read my paper single authored, so that it's very clear those are my convictions. And I love people like Prof. Ratele, Professor Mkize, Professor Magwazas, Professor Toleni Sodi.
Why do you like them?
Oh, they give us the, you know, pomp your primer.
Because Rateles in that book,
he writes about the theorization and the thinking around what goes on into the minds of analysts. Prof. Sodis, they're a powerful voice that has an African voice with an African science internationally. Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize, oh, he's brilliant. Professor Augustine Noye, oh, he's amazing. Professor Magwaza, the Gobodos,
Pumla. Yeah.
They've given us the airtime. You see, what I like about that generation, Bona, they just do the fire, and then they say, Analyst, they keep on giving us that power. That's what they've done for us, the Prof. Ratellis, the Prof. Pumlas, so that we get to grounds where the land is so fertile for us to have fun in this world of science. And bringing the fun that says African scholarship is beautiful, African scholarship is legit, but we can only legitimize when we are able to write and have many of these books by Prof. Ratelli. And I become the book myself that will be prescribed in the training of the next psychologist to come.
Where you did this, the traditional and
It's visible. I can see it. I can reference it because I know it. This is why we have the Noyes, Professor Ramoses, who spoke about Ubuntu, the psyche of an African person. Now we bring it into the room.
And one would say, when Anele, that's long overdue. I mean, because we are in Africa, and then you would ask, and why has it taken so long? I mean, look, Anele, there are people who, and maybe we must talk to it about the dangers of ignoring what spiritual healing and psychological, where someone would say, but you know what, I don't want to see only the psychologist. I want also, and this person then denies, there's this self-denial that, you know what, and you spoke somehow about it, but I want us to zoom on it. And other dangers where someone would say, but no, I don't want to go that route. Look, I've been conditioned to think that route, which is African healing, that there's something inherently wrong about it. Are there dangers?
Well, in the clinical space, obviously you can't impose, right? And automatically such convictions are then deemed as religious beliefs that you impose, theological beliefs that you impose. So I don't go there if a patient doesn't give me consent to go there. Or if I can see it's gonna end in tears. Well, it has ended in bad vibes in many instances, where some patients they don't report me officially, or they spoke to other doctors or colleagues that I work with. I was uncomfortable, but like, you are an adult, you should have told me, or kind of. So I'm very tactful about what I say and how I say it, and what I do, right? Because of the way people think about my position and how my position can be used against me. But rather, I gift those patients who want to see value, and if they are willing to engage me further, I'm then able to say, potentially, if this is not acknowledged, this 1 and 2 could happen, but not in a form of causing distress in the life of a patient, but rather empowering the patient to consider these things. And my key thing is always get this, these things that I'm telling you, I don't do most of them, or I wouldn't do them, but I encourage you, like I would encourage you to see a psychiatrist for medication. If I'm dealing with complex grief of someone who has a trauma of someone that passed in the past, in the past, or that died and they have not resolved their anger and rage, like there's one particular client I'm working with now who's very angry at her mother who's late. And you're not only angry to the experience and the trauma, but you are angry at idlozi that itself is not settled. So it doesn't help ukuthi you holding on to the trauma and the pain of the trauma, but lo muntu ukuze uxole nawe and be at peace with what happened in the past, you need to uphahlele yena kuqala. Umxhele inkukhu emhlophe, ugeze ngenyongo, uye esigangeni ulethe ikhandlela elimhlophe, ubize umoya nabantu abadala, ushisa impepho, uthi mama ngiyakuxolela for what you've caused, and I'm also ngale nyongo le cela amathongo asihlanganise khona ukuze ukwazi na uxolela la ngalapho ukhona, so that we can start beginning the healing work of the trauma that you left me with.
There's someone, Anele, who's watching and listening to us and drinking tea with us today, and this person has some disconnection with his or her ancestors, and I mean, just in one step, you probably have spoken about it, but maybe without belaboring the point, I'm asking you to just one step. What does this person do? I mean, for this person, what does he do to go back? I mean, to reconnect with his or her ancestors?
It's a very difficult one now, especially where most of our Black families and people that are educated lean more to Christianity, and that has taken away recognition of isintu, ubuntu, and all of those fundamental values. Sometimes I always say to people, healing comes from transgression in moments like that. And what does transgression look like? We may have been raised and socialized to be Christians, but one thing we can never socialize in someone's life is faith and belief in what they believe in. You can accustom them into a religious framework or a religious domination, or either others, or seal and all of that, and then someone later like, I know, I'm going to go to Lutheran or I'm going to be atheist, because that's their conviction. So I always say to people, go to spaces and moments that will be palatable for you around what looks like faith, what looks like healing. In that way, you can still keep what works in terms of the normatives. But if kunezinto brambu uma uthi ubheka kuthiwa ziyolunga ekhaya, ungenzanga next, kuthiwa bunyathele ekhaya, unyathele ekhaya kakhulu, ugoduke uye Limpopo, uye KwaZulu Natal, kuthiwa mbolala nje ekhaya,
Iyakumqanduli nje.
uyolala nje ekhaya, and you get okay.
You come back and
uhlangene,
you may not have an explanation.
Exactly, right? Uthi uhamba nje awuwenza ikhamba, ugaya utshwala nje for abantu abadala ekhaya, awusebenzisanga umuthi. Not everyone in the world that we live in has to use imithi. Amanye amathongo, amanye amadlozi awahlangani nemithi. Even more so imithi emdala, but not all of us are healers. All of us are within the concept of being healers, but there are others who specialize in dark work. And in dark work, It's dark things and black magic. In light work, amadlozi participate with us and allow us to do the healing work. So even in the world and the constructions of African healing, in whichever way we imagine healing, you need to understand the language of your ancestors.
Which also, when Anel brings me to, what's your vision that ultimately we're going to, I mean, there's going to be, what's your long-term vision that both systems would one day, I mean, or both worlds would not emerge, but you'd come to a place where both are given the due recognition. Is that and somehow earlier on you spoke about it, but yeah, not in so many words. Yeah,
that's a very optimistic view of looking at it. Which is I'm a very optimistic person, but I think what we need more is good scholarship. The more scholarship we have, the more
like what you're doing now.
The more students we supervise on these matters, the more
who come from both worlds.
Not really, but even in our training of psychologists, early introduce them to African psychology, early introduce them to leaders. I've got a book I'm going to write after my PhD. It showcases the lives of people who have given psychology a voice in Africa. What psychology looks like, and what then I'm drawing from that is the more research we do, the more in our training and development of psychologists to come, expose them to these realities. And in the scholarship I am intending to do, my hope is I will be a Ramose of my time. I'll be a Kopano of my time that is given the legitimacy, the language, and normalcy of how this looks like in practice.
Was this discussion important? Was this conversation important? To look at, I mean, the West, your Eurocentric approach, and the African-centered approach, was it worth it? You may be seeking healing where you are. You may be thinking, you may be getting confused about what does it mean to be an African seeking African solution in healing your own trauma that I may not know of, Anele may not know of. But today you have an opportunity to, in fact, get to a point to say, essentially there's nothing wrong in seeking African solutions to African problems or challenges. I hope you'd continue to subscribe, you'll continue to share, you'll continue to like our Tea with Botha podcast, so that the world begins to know that there are these difficult, unconventional, uncomfortable conversations that we as Africans are having in the 21st century.
This is Tea with Botha.